by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Like when they attack.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
That's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Well, there's a fake because if I ever saw one. Our military runs on SAP. Our military runs because SAP.
Well, Peter, you're an old BASIC programmer, and I'm an old BASIC programmer, and we remember when we said if, and then you say if, such and such equals such and such, then you do this. Right, but this is when they say if then else or if then because. It's not the right thing. It's not the right answer, right? It's a fake because.
That's right. It's a fake because. And George and I were talking earlier this morning about this. Again, I'll show the book here. Share screen. Here we go. This book that I've been reading by Robert Dilts, called Sleight of Mouth, Volume 2: How Words Change Worlds. And I got to tell you, I think that this really might be one of the most important books that I've ever read. And I think that Dilts' work is some of the most important work that I've ever read. And, a little background on Dilts. He's, I think that he was a grad student and he worked under Gregory Bateson, who famously weaponized the double bind in the OSS and the CIA, which is basically putting people into a damned if I do, damned if I don't situation, kind of like voting for Republicans or Democrats. That's the kind of the ultimate double bind, right? But Dilts worked for him, and Dilts noticed when he was working with one of the guys who invented neurolinguistic programming, Richard Bandler, that there was a single pattern that kept popping up all of the time in the way that people communicate. And Teo Morelli, who has a YouTube channel called Mind Titans, and he's a NLP coach, and he pointed out to me that almost all politicians and almost all talking heads on television use the same linguistic pattern, which is if then, or if then because, meaning if this happens, then it means that this is going to happen, and it's because of this. Now, Scott Adams talks about this phenomenon. He calls a misdirection something called a fake because. But I'm here to say today that I think that most becauses are fake, because if you haven't experienced something directly, okay, then the only way that you actually understand something to be quote unquote true is that you have faith in the source of the information. That is, you have faith in some kind of scientific evidence, or you have faith in some kind of expert that is giving you that information. But at the end of the day, anything that you do not experience directly involves some kind of faith, regardless of the way that you want to frame it. And we're so programmed at this point to take the words of experts, to assume that things like Einstein's special relativity are real, even though we don't actually have any way to to prove that it's real, that we just take these things for granted. And the way that it manifests itself most in our lives is in the news. Because we're told that the lockdown happened because some kind of virus got out, and the virus got out because it was a lab leak. Oh no, it wasn't a lab leak. It was zoonotic. Oh no, it was something else. These are all fake becauses, and the news is so filled with these fake becauses that if you're using any kind of metadata analysis, which is how I met you in the first place, then you can start to see that there are alternate stories. There's alternate ways of looking at the information that's being presented, and maybe the case that's being made by the mainstream media is not necessarily the one that you should be looking at.
I agree. Just try doing a couple of true becauses and see what happens. Just say, well, it's a live exercise, and then the director of the State Department comes out and says it's a live exercise, and then the president almost bang bang. And I might be getting that because I got too much volume on my mic. But try doing a couple of true becauses and see what happens. And then the president says you should have told me. So now we know the president's not in on it. Just one example. Or try saying the orange hat's through the gates rather than Trump at J6. See what happens.
Right. So the tell though is being able to recognize the pattern, and it's interesting to me because I have a hard time consuming any kind of mainstream media at this point. And I even have a hard time even looking at Twitter and social media, because so much of the information is being propagated by faith and by faith alone, and it has to. I had a thought this morning that isn't it curious that phonetically that the word faith is so close to the word fake? Because you have to have faith. You have to have faith in all of these things in order to be able to believe them.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, I think if you do get in the business of looking at it and saying, let's just take the Manson murders, and you say, well, this was not too far from you, down the street from you. If you say, look, this is the Hollywood compromise operation. We had to stop the communists. We had to use LSD. We had to use sex. We had to use all these lures to take down Hollywood, to control Hollywood. And when the thing got out of control and there was murders, we had to get in there and remove all the surveillance equipment, because this yellow drive, where the Sharon Tate murders, was all under surveillance. We had all kinds of bugs in there and cameras. We had to get all that shit out of there.
You call that clean up on aisle 4, right?
Yeah, we had to get all that shit out of there. Otherwise, it would out the Chaos program or the Phoenix program in America, which I think is something different. I think it's a blackjack program. But whatever it was, Chaos, COINTELPRO, Phoenix in America, blackjack program, we can't have that being outed. So we have to make up some story about how somebody who wrote backup songs for the Beach Boys really is, this devil worshiper cult guy.
Right. And then you get Vince Bugliosi to write a 900-page cover story,
where he has witnesses lie, and there's key people left out of the story, which is like these guys with connections to Scorzani's assassination groups, and he's connected to Curtis LeMay, who's bombs away LeMay with the guy from Dr. Strangelove. That's odd company to keep. Peter, you and I, when we're tooling around Pacific Palisades, we don't necessarily meet with like the guy who founded the Rand Corporation, or an assassination unit in New Orleans. Typically they're nice people, but they're not those people.
Arthur, I turned my gain down, so is that better? I
think you were a little hot. You were a little hot there.
Maybe I was a little hot. I didn't mean to be hot, but there it is. Yeah, I mean, the origin stories for all of these things. I mean, I look at things like now, like my mother worked for Rand, and my aunt worked for Rand, and my high school algebra tutor was a mathematician at Rand, and my next door neighbor was a mathematician at Rand, and he taught me game theory when I was, 11 years old with Avalon Hill games. And I used to think that Rand did a lot of serious work, but I look back at Herman Kahn's mutually assured destruction theory, and I just think that that's a story. I think it's a story that whoever Herman Kahn actually really works for, I mean, the contract went through the Pentagon, but who knows who he really worked for, right? At the Hudson Institute. That was a story that needed to get put out in order to push the nuclear bomb making industry, if that's even a real thing. I mean, if Mark Kulek is correct, that's just a big money laundry, right? That's just a bunch of checks being written to people who are, digging holes in the ground and creating explosions and videos at Lookout Mountain Studios, right?
Well, if you go to Nevada test site, I think there's a couple hundred explosions, and there is radioactivity, and I've interviewed people out there. So I think that's a real thing. But I think what you're saying is the whole idea that we have to build an adequate stockpile to mutually assure the destruction of our enemy, which means we need 20,000 missiles, and then they need 20,000, actually 30,000 each.
Right, and isn't that, Kubrick, Jason Horsley's book notwithstanding, isn't that the meta message of Dr. Strangelove, is that, gee whiz, we've built so many bombs that we can destroy the whole world, when maybe we built that many bombs, but maybe we didn't.
Yeah, when they're ready to go, when I.B. Hale wants a couple more hundred to build a couple more ICBMs, in the leader of this show, with that oboe, that chilling oboe that goes throughout the whole lead of the Duke Report opener, here's the Atlas V rocket, I.B. Hale, it's just an I.B. Hale, a Hale family kind of, Kennedy shooting, a Bobby Kennedy shooting, Martin Luther King Kennedy shooting. You may as well just somebody put Hale up there, every time. But yeah, I mean, these events are controlled by a very small number of people. That it's not the plebiscite and the great voting and all the campaigns and all that. That's all fairy tale.
Yeah, and it turns out my thesis for reframing reality is that the most important weapon that there is language and the application of it, because you can reframe people's realities by just using words. And the secret that they don't want anyone to know is that they want everyone to think that magic lives in Harry Potter's world, right? And the fact is that if Dan Rather can sit in front of a desk, on a grainy NTSC black and white television signal and say his head went violently forward, and oh yeah, I'm not actually going to show you the Zapruder film because Henry Luce has bought the rights for it and he's locked it in a safe and he's never going to show it to anybody. And it isn't until 7 years later, when I think the Freedom of Information Act was the thing that forced them to kind of reveal that his head didn't go violently forward. But people believe that. So the words coming out of Dan Rather's mouth and the trust, the faith in Dan Rather as a source convinced an entire country that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman. And, and I.B. Hale is off in Hollywood, doing drugs with Charles Manson, whatever it is that's going on.
Robert Allen Hale.
Robert Allen Hale. Yeah, Robert Allen Hale.
He changed his name to Senate.
Right.
Well, you're right, Peter. I mean, let's look at it. Like you said, an hour after they caught Lee Harvey Oswald, we've now determined Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone.
Right.
Powerful words. You could do the same thing with having Donnie O'Sullivan in Wuhan at the fish market, and just say, here's Lee Harvey fishmonger's fishmongery, and we can now determine they should have done this an hour after the breakout of coronavirus, the live exercise, to counteract Pompeo saying we're in the middle of a live exercise and Trump saying you should have told me. They should have had a cut-in with Donnie O'Sullivan saying we can now determine that there's this fishmonger acted alone, Lee Harvey fishmonger acted alone, and this bat acted alone, the lone bat theory, the lone fishmonger theory.
Yeah, and it would be interesting too to kind of, you probably could do this, is to kind of look for signature reduction. So Mike Pompeo says live exercise. You might look for other things that got pushed in social media right after that happened. Things like maybe on YouTube, suddenly Live Aid videos pop up as recommendations in everybody's timeline, and that anything that is named live something winds up getting promoted in order to kind of push that live exercise messaging down, you know?
Yeah, they didn't certainly cover that on the evening news. You know, Pompeo says coronavirus is live exercise. I never saw that as a title or a headline. I think it just slipped by. You know, it was kind of one of those moments where, like Al Haig says, "I'm in charge here." You know, people don't usually write it down and just kind of ignore it. But I do agree with you. These words do have a lot of power, and you're writing a book to that effect, I believe.
Yeah, I am, and like I said, part of my process is to go through. My metadata analysis is in order to figure out who the people are who control us, we have to understand what the tools are, and part of the issue with covering current events is that there's always another rabbit hole to go down. Every day there's another rabbit hole, and your entire career is kind of living proof that kind of anything that you poke at, it's all paper mache. The stories are all paper mache, and it doesn't really matter which story you poke at. If you poke at it hard enough, you'll find that whatever the thing is that was covered by the news or by academia in many cases. I mean, the Duke Report is filled. I've got over 700 books. I got probably about 100 books in the queue that I need to get posted onto the Duke Report, which basically are academic or journalistically sound books that tell a completely different story than the story that you get on television. They tell a completely different story than the story that you get if you got a university education at any kind of modern university. The stories that you get told in these places are cover stories, and it makes me start to wonder. There's a woman named I think Cara St. Louis. She's got a book. I haven't finished it, and I think I talked about it on the last show. And her contention is that our entire historical timeline is wrong. That is, there are whole centuries that have been either expanded or compressed in order to fit another alternate agenda. And I haven't had time to really go into that. But if you just start to look at the metadata of language, and language is so easy because we swim in it. This if-then cause the thing is about sleight of... So just to explain what sleight of mouth is. Robert Dilts discovered that there is this pattern, which is if-then and then a complex equivalence associated with it. And that it is used so often that there are actually 14 logical ways that you can deconstruct that argument. You can come back with a retort or a reply to that on purely a linguistic level, meaning you don't actually have to have any domain experience or understanding of the topic that is being discussed in order to be able to understand the logic of the sleight of mouth. And so the thing that starts to become really interesting when you look at that is that if you dive into the world of things called logical fallacies, on one of the Duke Report contributors is called Ethical Skeptic. And on the Ethical Skeptic website, he's got over 3,000 logical fallacies listed. Well, what's interesting is that most of those logical, or I'm not saying most, many, I would say a large proportion of the logical fallacies that, of the 3,000 logical fallacies that the Ethical Skeptic lists, fall under that cause-effect complex equivalence pattern. That is, they all fit the same linguistic pattern. And if you're trying to train people, this is what, neurolinguistic programming came out of the DIA. John Grinder was an operator who came out of the DIA. That if you can teach people how to recognize that cause-effect complex equivalence pattern, well, that's a lot easier than memorizing 3,000 logical fallacies. it's like it doesn't require a lot of domain understanding to be able to just analyze the tools. I mean, the linguistic patterns, and that's why I think that linguistics is kind of the key to this whole thing at this point, because how we use language. I'll give this another example is at the Council of Nicaea 325, the word logos was translated, I believe, into Latin for the Roman Church, but it was translated as the word, not logos. And logos is a word that has a much more expansive meaning, and I've talked about it earlier, that E. Michael Jones wrote a 800-page book on just the word logos and its implication. But it gets crazier, because when you jump to Augustine in the Catholic Church, who's like the 1200s, Augustine only speaks Latin. So Augustine's understanding of Greek philosophy, or the word logos, is only in the Latin interpretation of it. So it gets compounded. So the understanding of a particular word, and the reason that this word is so important is because logos, the concept of logos, is critical thinking. It is what you and I are doing right now. We're taking ideas, we're packaging them, through our analysis, we're making the words come out of our mouths and into each other's ears. And that process of doing that is, in essence, the understanding, the fundamental understanding of what reality is. Because if you understand how words impact your ability to perceive things, if you understand that unless you experienced something directly, okay, that you have to have faith in the words that you're consuming, or I could say the language, because we're dealing with visual language now too, pictures and sound and words. That our perception of how things really work is really narrow if we don't understand how our critical thinking capabilities that we're all born with. We all are born with critical thinking skills, and it's not a joke that the purpose of the education system is to eliminate your ability to think critically.
Yeah, I think we're all ready for this summer, for instance, of sort of a chaos, a redo of chaos. And you've got, Gavin McInnes hiring Rent a Crowd on one side, for, I don't know, give them a shirt, a pro-Palestinian shirt, and then the Jewish student or Jewish professor supporting pro-Palestine, give them the appropriate shirts. And the most important thing is they tug back and forth, back and forth, back and forth over a sign. And the more tuggings back and forth that the sign, and I'm talking about a cardboard sign, or like a long 25-foot cardboard sign where like 10 people on each side, like a tug of war, can pull back and forth on it. Mm-hmm. If you could get that on film, that becomes the word chaos, right? That means that the college campuses are in disarray, and there's chaos, and that means that Jewish students are being hated on, and that means pro-Palestinian people don't have a voice about the Gaza, and all that happens in chaos is Gavin McInnes hires a Rent a Crowd, and a lot of college greenery, campus grass, gets damaged. That's really what the chaos is, really, at the end of the day. But we interpret it because the sign is being pulled back and forth, just like the gates at J6. Gavin McInnes production is always the same thing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then we say it's chaos, and that's horrible. J6 must have been a horrible thing. These college things must be a horrible thing. I think it's the same actors.
I do too.
The same actors, yeah.
No, yeah, because these people are crews. They are crews of people, and I can tell you that there's somebody that I met when I was doing public affairs. That's on a very popular, quote unquote, conservative network, and when I met him, he was doing public affairs work. He was an actor, and he had a group of actors that were like-minded actors, and they were willing to go to any event for hire. That is, if you told them how to dress and what signs they needed to carry and what words you wanted to have them chanting out of their mouth, they were available. Okay. And there was a rate card, and how many people do you want, and how many hours do you need them, and so when people talk about crisis actors, what people don't realize is that that not unlike modeling agencies and acting agencies in Hollywood, there are K Street style consulting firms that do nothing except organize these types of people showing up in order to control the perspective, in order to reframe people's realities into seeing, oh, gee whiz, look, all these college students are really upset. The thing that I find the most insulting to my intelligence as I watch all of the news that's coming out of the Middle East is how anything that is anti-war is reconfigured, and it doesn't matter what network you're on. It doesn't matter if it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC. It doesn't matter, to pro-Hamas. Everything that's anti-war is now it gets reconfigured as pro-Hamas.
And anti-Semitic hate speech.
Yes.
So if you don't want to send another $20 billion to Kolomoisky, it's anti-Semitic hate speech because you're hating on Kolomoisky because he's Jewish.
Right.
You know, and they've got this anti-Semitic hate speech awareness campaign bill that's going through Congress.
Right.
But, you know, I think your point's well taken. You just take the word chaos, go back to the Mansons, you know, for the Seymour Hersh broke the original chaos program. And even the people at the top levels of CIA, like, Colby and so forth, it was so compartmentalized. Colby didn't even have all the details of what chaos was. So,
but at the same time that Colby was doing chaos, Mel Brooks was doing Get Smart, and the bad guys were called chaos. Like, is that signature reduction? It sounds like signature reduction to me.
Yeah, I remember it was one of my favorite shows. You know,
it was. Yeah, that and the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah, Man from U.N.C.L.E. Yeah, there was the Girl from U.N.C.L.E. too. Although I never saw the Girl from U.N.C.L.E. I keep hearing about this show, Girl from U.N.C.L.E.
And it's funny because in the Man from U.N.C.L.E., they enter the back door of the secret headquarters. He goes into the dressing room in the back of the cleaners.
Yeah.
And in The Good Shepherd, when Angleton, Matt Damon, is sent over to London, where he goes for 5 years, he leaves his wife, who's played by Angelina Jolie, for 5 years. He goes into a dry cleaners, and he goes through the back door of the dry cleaners. And I was going, oh my goodness, it's Get Smart.
You'd be surprised how much intelligence you can pick up on various operatives like Alina Habba or Matt Pottinger at dry cleaners. But yeah, dry cleaners is one of those things people have to do, and so it gets them out of their house, like getting your hair cut.
All right, I'm going to talk to the mod and say, I don't know why you're putting up so long's comments, but if you could ban them off of Twitter, that would be fine with me. Like, I don't care. So I find their comments off topic and provocative. So just, if we can make them go away, I just as soon ignore them. So, well, it's the problem with live streaming on Twitter at this point.
Well, it shows you that the amount of signal reduction, you know, I've had this NSA person for 8 years, 8 different relatives in NSA and DARPA. Father worked for DARPA. You know,
yeah, I think that's the person that's
key person who put the back door into all the internet social media programs. So, I mean, here is the person still tracking. And, you know, interesting on the Burning Man, we looked at it and said, you know, it's on one side of a gold mountain, and where I've been is on the other side of this mountain. There's a lot of lithium too, supposedly. I think it's a gold mining operation. But let's say you change the watershed. Let's take the word watershed, and you made it go like a placer, you know, like Sutter's Mill. You made it go toward Burning Man and Ray Dalio, where they've been having all their, like, hedonistic, sun-drenched, crazy rape sessions. That would, if you did a whole bunch of mining, let's say for lithium, and again, you could call it words like green, crisis or whatever, climate crisis, and so we need to have lithium batteries for electric vehicles. You get a lot more gold than you do lithium. Lithium's $3 an ounce. Gold is 2,300 an ounce. And I just think you divert the watershed to Elko, and now you have adverse possession on this huge area of land, and you've got all these hippies coming out every year. And it's your gold, it's your silver, everything is yours if you change the watershed. So watershed's my favorite word today.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. I was the creative director on something called the Springs Preserve in Las Vegas, and we built this display that showed. It was called "Where Does Electricity Come From?" And we took one of those orange electric cords that you buy a 50-foot electrical cord and you plug it in the wall if you've got a saw or something. And we made a loop out of it so that it went around in a circle. And what you would do is that you would pull on this cable, and there was a video screen in front of you, and it would follow your electricity back from the socket in your house back up to the pole, and then along all of the transmission poles up to the high power poles, and then follow the high power poles over the mountain, and it would go to a coal burning electrical plant. So it showed you that the clean electricity that was coming out of your wall was coming from a coal plant, that was over the mountain that you couldn't see. And and that's the dirty secret of Teslas and all electric vehicles, is that they're all 80 or 90% of the electricity that they're using is all coming from burning hydrocarbons. They want to put up as many solar system. I have a friend in the oil business who told me about 10 years ago that if you covered every bit of the southwestern desert in the United States and all of the kind of vacant land in the United States with solar panels, you'd still only get to about 11% of the kilowatt hours per year that we use in the United States.
I think its energy concentration is just so different. The energy concentration in fossil fuels is just so different than solar. It's like 1,000,000 to 1 difference. So it's really, like you say, grotesque in terms of how much resources have to put. Not that solar isn't good in some cases where you don't want to run out, like for remote railroad crossings and stuff. You don't want to run lines all the way out to every one of those, but for the most part, fossil fuel is here to stay, and that's why I see these huge mining operations, for lithium. I just think it's a DARPA defense program to get tantalum and all the rare metals and gold and silver and everything else.
What are they using the sequestered CO2 for? Because they have these huge plants right now that are creating. They're basically, I don't know, liquefying CO2 and then putting it underground. Is that what they're doing? They have to have a reason for doing that. Are they cooling their nuclear drilling equipment? Is that what the real story of all of the CO2 is?
Well, that's an idea because small modular reactors have been around a long time. We talked about General Atomics and I.B. Hale, and they had a plane that Curtis LeMay was behind called the B-36, the Peacemaker.
Sure, I have. If you go to my Flickr account, I have a picture of a Peacemaker as the top image. I'll keep going and I'll find it.
Yeah. So this is the long-range penetration bomber, right, of Curtis LeMay. Well, I.B. Hale and General Atomics were going to get the nuclear version of that, what's called the NP-36, and they all had top secret clearances at General Atomics because it used nuclear. And Jeff Bezos' grandfather, L.P. Geis, created the above top secret clearance. And this is also need to know, which is compartmentalized, so highly compartmentalized that even Colby didn't know what they were doing. I still say this is the highly compartmentalized secret program where all the anti-constitutional surveillance is done. Because if the CIA director doesn't know, it's compartmentalized, right? And we've had various people in the program come out and be whistleblowers for it and say, hey, it's mass surveillance like Snowden, or hey, it's biosurveillance. Let's see if we got look at that P-36 there.
Yeah. Okay. So, and for our mod, please stop starring so long. Like, I don't want to see so long. When you star it, it highlights it for me, and I don't want to see it. I want so long to be so gone. That's all. Thank you. And yeah, free speech, no free speech. This is this is our platform. This is free. George and Peter are free to say whatever they want on this platform.
Well, I think so long is probably saying, hey, this program.
Wait, you know, if Solon wants us to dox her, we could just dox her. Should we just dox her, George?
No, we would never do that. We would never go after an NSA person whose father worked for DARPA and had 8 different people in their family working for DARPA.
Okay.
Because they could hit back harder. They have endless resources. But what did go so long was this program for about 3 or 4 years with IBHEAD. This nuclear program allowed General Atomics a huge fund of money. It was a big failure. Nuclear-powered plane putting a reactor on this plane was a big bad idea. It could barely fly. It flew a few test flights.
Why is that? Why is that comment there?
Well, I think they're talking about how this money was gone out of the.
No, I'm serious. Come on. Like I want this to go away.
Yeah, they might not know how, Peter.
Right.
So
okay.
But what I'm saying is, this is what NSA loves. They love compartmentalized where you can't see it. It's beyond the oversight of the American people, where even the CIA director couldn't see this program of this plane, right? And that's why I say that they started the ICBM program, Ivy Hale and Robert Hale, right, with the General Dynamics. That's the perfect place. And I've got proof of this to put an assassination squad, which is the Skorzeny assassination squad, because the CIA director cannot see it, right? And we know Skorzeny's brought into this. Later on, it comes into this assassination squad comes to L.A. through this guy named Reeve Whitson. Reeve, like Christopher Reeves, only Reeve, and then Witson. What I'm saying is all these assassination squads and all these kind of low-intensity programs, they're going to be found in the same places where you find white elephant programs like the NP-36.
Yeah, and white elephant, you're not kidding. I mean, this was the worst engineered piece. I mean, before the F-35, there was the B-36. This plane was so underpowered with 6 engines that they had to strap 4 jets onto. Do you see the jets on the wingtips there? That's because they added them on because it was 6 engines. The engines were operating at such a high revolutions, at such a high tolerance as far as the engines, that the engines were always blowing up on this plane. I
think those jet engines are jet assist for the takeoff because it was such a pig. And when you threw the nuclear reactor in there, James Jameson's another great example of we had a charrette at General Atomics based on top of the old nuclear reactor in Point Loma, and we were threatened 3 times by someone who said he was James Jameson, who was the billionaire running General Atomics. This didn't go away in the 50s with I.B. Hale. General Atomics now is the maker of the MQ-9 Reaper drone for our current Air Force and military. They're the one that did the secret flight of all the test kits from Korea to Baltimore to Johns Hopkins during the live exercise when they were trying to create a false narrative. So this hasn't gone away. These DARPA kids still have this enclave, the top secret enclave, where they decide what projects they're going to invest in. They decide what live exercises are going to happen. They decide what mass formation psychoses are going to happen, and they decide what the course of history is going to take.
Right, and that's why we have to start looking up more. And what I mean by that is that we can look down at the details of all of these programs, and we can see the fingerprints everywhere. But if we don't start looking up at the metadata, okay, which I think I'm supporting your point, then we're not going to be able to see the patterns. And I think that one of the things that about your work, George, that I've always I didn't understand it at first, and it took me a long time to understand it. Is the pattern recognition. If you understand the metadata patterns that happen, that things are money laundering. So Jack Posobiec posted a tweet yesterday about how I can't remember how many hundreds of billions of dollars or whatever it is that went to Ukraine. So we sent all this money to Ukraine, right, in the last year and a half. Much of it was earmarked to build fortifications on a border area in Ukraine, and there was a report that came out. Now, again, the report, I don't know where the report. It looked like a Russian or Ukrainian language outlet. So it's just words I'm reading. So I don't know that the words are true, but the words corroborated information that you were talking about as far as Kolomoisky, and that the companies so the money goes from the United States to Ukraine. The government of Ukraine takes the money and gives it to different companies that are supposedly building fortifications to protect Ukraine from Russia. Well, all of the companies are holding companies. They're imaginary companies, and they don't have any employees, and they don't know where any of the money went. So the billions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer money. Now, I know that when was Teapot Dome? When did that happen?
Harding administration, so I think 24-ish.
Okay, so in 1924, if something like that happened, Congress got involved usually, and somebody got in trouble. But I can't imagine at this point that anyone's going to get in trouble for any money that has gone to Ukraine, regardless of wherever it went.
Well, you picked Teapot Dome, so I think the Rockefellers were exacting a reprisal against Doheny. If you've seen the movie There Will Be Blood, played by Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yes.
Doheny was kind of this gold prospector turned oil prospector, and then turned oil, maven, where he hit all these oil wells out in, the California basin out there, or the hills out there. And he didn't pay Rockefeller to ship his oil. The Rockefeller Railroads, Tilford actually came out, the guy who did the whole, ran Standard Oil, and said, Doheny, come on, man. And Doheny knew the game. He said, I know that you own the railroads, and I know that you're going to charge me an exorbitant rate to get my oil down there, and you're going to give a rebate to yourself, and I'm going to be at a disadvantage until you guys work me out of business. So I'm going to go partner with this new kid named Getty, and we're going to build a pipeline down across the Southern California desert, and we wouldn't have USC as a university if it wasn't for Doheny. We wouldn't have the Beach Boys song talking about Doheny Way if it wasn't for that. But when they did that to the Rockefellers, they said, I'm going to get the Dohenys and I'm going to get the Gettys. And notice none of the Getty males can live past 51 without being a tangle of kind of some ball of, some.
Well, Baltazar's got to be close to 51 at this point, right?
If they stay out of oil.
Yeah.
If the Gettys stay out of oil, they'll live. But once you're a male in the Getty airline and you lineage, you go into oil, you're going to end up either dead from an overdose or a paraplegic or both, and you're going to get kidnapped, and you're going to have your fingers cut off, and what else did they cut off? His ear. And look what happened to Doheny. They murdered Ned Doheny, and they went after
senior, the older one. So
yeah,
the younger Ned Doheny it's funny when you posted that. Okay, so long. Why is so long there? Stop.
NSA has the ability to intercept my email. So when you send me an email for this invitation, they might be as an equivalent in power to me. NSA has a lot of power.
I understand, but
it's distracting, but
it's
Just stay with Ned Doheny.
I'll stay with Ned Doheny. Ned Doheny, the younger guy, is a musician, and he is a guy that I met. He hired me to take pictures of him. I would say probably like 10 years ago. And so I spent a couple of days with him. He's a very interesting guy, but I think his mother gave all of their money away to the Catholic Church. So he grew up, I would say slightly affluent, but I don't think that he wasn't, nobody was building him a castle on Doheny Drive.
Probably saved his life.
Yeah.
Probably saved his life, because if she saw what happened to all the male Gettys,
Right.
Union Oil, remember Union Oil with the Gettys?
Right.
The Rockefellers never forgave. And people don't remember what Ida Tarbell wrote about the Rockefellers, but they had this guy named Dynamite Bill. That would
Who's Ida Tarbell?
She was the one who wrote all the muckraking works about John D. Rockefeller and how underhanded Rockefeller was with all of his partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
And just all the double dealing. And if you didn't kowtow to Rockefeller, he would put you out of business. He'd murder you, or he'd blow up your refinery, or he would sabotage your bridges, or cause some kind of industrial accident, or cause some kind of fire. He had these Pinkertons that would go in and destroy everything that you had if you didn't buckle under. So, the day, and the thing about Hollywood is when they tell these stories like There Will Be Blood,
Mm-hmm.
they always carve the Rockefeller piece out of it.
Right. It's like the. I wanted to play this and to see what you think about it. It's like the Godfather, where they conveniently leave out the CIA and the Vatican.
Yeah. CIA with Hyman.
Right. What do you call it? The mafia was almost destroyed by Mussolini. And, when Patton and Montgomery landed in Sicily, Angleton and Wild Bill Donovan were there, driving to the jail and pulling all of the gangsters out of jail, the mafiosos out of jail, so that they could get their drug business going. But there's talk about predictive programming. Let me see if I can. There's a new Coppola movie. Okay, the CIA. Okay, so it's so funny because I'm at a point right now where I just want to make a map of CIA-related media sources, right? So somebody was calling Bellingcat CIA today, and I was going, no, Bellingcat is MI6. Okay, it's close, but not exactly, right? It's like, you guys are so close. It's like you say Mossad when you mean MI6. You say MI6 when you mean CIA. You say CIA when you mean Mossad. It's like, it's this game. But Coppola has a new movie. Who knew? It's American Zoetrope. I thought American Zoetrope went bankrupt. I guess they did, but like Donald Trump, I guess you can keep going bankrupt. But check this out and give me let me know if you can hear the audio with a thumbs up. So here we go. Let's see if we can make this run.
When does an empire die? Does it collapse in one terrible moment? No. But there comes a time when its people no longer believe in it.
Don't let the now destroy the forever.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, welcome.
Is this society, is this way we're living, the only one that's available to us?
Taking our city back.
And when we ask these questions, when there's a dialogue about them, that basically is a utopia.
All this John D. style credits. So have you seen that before, George?
No, it's good to see him. I don't know if I sat with a Francis Ford Coppola imitator at his vineyard or not, but the way everyone was looking like they were very young, aspiring actors, all hanging on his every word.
Sure.
I tend to think that it was him, and he was enjoying the wine and everything, and in the Sonoma Valley there. But he seems to be kind of a person who takes up all the air in the room. He has a big ego, and he tells stories one after another. You couldn't fit a word in edgewise. Not that I wanted to. It's very interesting. The guy who did American Graffiti, and a lot of the stars that
George Lucas did
George
American
Lucas,
Graffiti.
I'm sorry. What was the first one he did?
Coppola?
Coppola was Godfather?
Well, he did The Godfather. He did Cotton Club. He did Apocalypse Now. He did. He's done a lot. One of the movies that I want to revisit that I haven't seen in decades is the Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, because it's interesting how I'm looking at things, kind of meta information now. Like Joseph was kind of the original. What's the word that I'm looking for?
Battered child.
Well, infiltrator. Okay, now I understand that he was sold into slavery. I understand that he was sold in by his brothers, but he infiltrated that Egyptian hierarchy and got to a point where he was in control of it.
True.
And so, Mean Streets is Marty Scorsese, Arthur Stone. And Mean Streets is a great film, by the way. You looking at me? No, it's After You, Mr. Chavallo. In Mean Streets. In Mean Streets, there's another Meisner repetition scene. Okay, so if I haven't I've told this story before, but Sanford Meisner was an acting coach, and one of the first exercises in Meisner is repetition, where actors would spend weeks and weeks and weeks saying the same lines over and over again in order to understand that acting was not about the words, but how you delivered the words. Acting is not about the words, but how you deliver the words. Acting is not about the words, it's how you deliver the words. And so you look at Martin Scorsese films, Martin Scorsese uses a lot of Meisner repetition. Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now, I think, does some too. Dennis Hopper does it in... Dennis Hopper directs Matt Damon and Mickey Rourke in the movie Rumblefish doing Meisner repetition. He goes, what, why, what, why, what, why. But in Taxi Driver, you point out, it's you looking at me, Robert De Niro wins the Academy Award. Later, in Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese, Joe Pesci goes, you think I'm funny, you think I'm funny, you think I'm funny. He wins the Academy Award. Now, if you watch the whole litany of Leonardo DiCaprio movies with Martin Scorsese, in each one of those movies, Leonardo DiCaprio has a Meisner repetition scene in the movie, and I'm convinced, as I'm standing here, that Leonardo DiCaprio was convinced that if he did a Meisner repetition in a Martin Scorsese film, that the Academy had to give him the Academy Award. So the last shot in the movie The Aviator is wave. I see if I can get close enough to my camera, but he's going, wave of the future. He's playing Howard Hughes, right? And he's going, wave of the future, wave of the future, wave of the future. So there's a whole series of, at one point I thought I would just go get so in Mean Streets, it's Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro going, after you, Mr. Chavallo. No, after you, Mr. Chavallo. No, I insist, Mr. Chavallo. No, after you, Mr. Chavallo. And then Taxi Driver, then Goodfellas, and then like 4 or 5 Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese movies in a row where he doesn't win the Academy Award. I thought that would be a funny video for YouTube.
I thought the sublimated things, the things that was not said, the thing that was in inside voices in their head that they shouldn't say outside, like Brad Pitt. Hey, I'm not Robert Hale. Hey, I'm not Robert Hale.
Well, George, you could take that movie and then just do your own audio.
Yeah, I should.
I mean, you could
Allen Hale.
You could do it. You could do it like. Did you ever see the Woody Allen movie "What's Up, Tiger Lily"? So I don't know what's true. Okay, because I don't know what's true because everything's fake. But the story about the movie "What's Up, Tiger Lily" is that Woody Allen wanted to do a comedy, but he didn't have the budget to make a movie. So what he did is that he went to Hong Kong and he licensed the American rights for a Hong Kong shoot 'em up, kind of kung fu gangster movie. And then he wrote his own soundtrack to go with the movie. And it's called What's Up, Tiger Lily. And it's a very funny movie.
You should play the trailer.
I'll see if I can go find it. Let me see if I can go find it. But you could take you could take clips from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or any of these other movies that you're talking about, and you could just do your own Woody Allen style soundtrack to it.
Well, I took the liberty of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I did a couple of Brad Pitt scenes where, for instance, Robert Allen Hale is supposedly fighting Bruce Lee. And he beats up Bruce Lee. And Brad Pitt's right there after he gets kicked and knocked down. He goes, "Hey, do that again."
Yeah,
do that again. See, Meisner works both ways. Meisner cuts both ways, Peter.
Yeah, no, Sanford Meisner was a genius. He definitely understood what was going on. Now I'm trying to figure out. Oh, look, the entire movie seems to be... let me see if I can figure this out. When
they repeat their line, like freedom of speech, they forget the word steal, like free to steal speech. That's what the NSA does, right? That's the word that they leave out.
Oh, look, it's got the lovin' spoonful in it. Freedom of speech.
This echoes the Laurel Canyon right here. Love and Spoonful? Oh my goodness gracious. Strawberry Alarm Clock's going to be next.
Love knows where my rosemary... I can't remember what it is. Okay, What's Up, Tiger Lily? Here we go. Name 3 presidents. Okay, it's 44 seconds long, so maybe I will not get a copyright strike. Although this movie is so hard to find, it's interesting whether or not I get a copyright strike at all would be interesting. Okay, here we go. Here's a scene from the movie. And I'll have to jump back here and...
Name 3 presidents.
Roosevelt, McKinley, Lincoln.
Oops. So you get it, right, George?
I kind of.
So somebody in Hong Kong made the movie.
Right, I get it.
That's not what the guy was saying in the movie.
Right.
Woody Allen licensed the movie and then wrote his own soundtrack and then released it as What's Up, Tiger Lily.
And there was a guy that Bruce Lee, he hated being called the fake Bruce Lee.
Jackie Chan?
Well, no, it was Jackie Chan supposedly liked Bruce Lee, but this other guy was the fake Bruce Lee. It was like, Bruce Lie, they called him. But they took originally, they took a lot of the movies they did and then overdubbed them. Jackie Chan overdubbed them with the English, with the Bruce Lee movies, and made a lot of money. Not comedy, but yeah, I think overdubbing is a good idea. I mean, that's an easy way to get a movie out.
Okay, I'm beside myself at this point. Okay, here we go. So there's a couple of questions here, or comments. Let me see. Zaganostra says, linguistics won't get there by itself. Jacques Ellul's book, Propaganda, The Formation of Men's Attitude, I think illustrates that. Zaganostra also always has a good recommendation, so I'll go look at that. Again, what I'm trying to do, and it's the reason it's taking so long, is because it's really easy to write a book that's got 1 million citations in it, and you lose 98% of the people along the way because you're trying to back up your case with citations, and you're building on the shoulders of giants. And there's lots of people who write books like that, and that's not what I want to do. Because I don't think people read that much anymore. So I want to do something that's even simpler than that. But I'll go look.
Well, Peter, I've learned one thing. My third guest is never going to be Lincoln.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the moderator this question one more time. Okay, I've asked 3 times not to star so long's comments. And they continue to get starred, and they continue to get put in to my feed, and I don't want to see them. So if you can't figure this out, then maybe we need to figure out something else out. I'm taking it out. It distracts me. It's not good. It's not fair to the people who watch the show. 11D says, I'm learning the forms of conditional sentences and their protasis and studying ancient Greek. Terrific. Great. I wish I had learned that when I was 14. I'm too old to understand it now. Zaganostra, here's what I was trying to get to. What is the status of the Learning Man event, George?
Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, we've had 38 of them. We're going to do one before we do the one at the same time. Burning Man is going to be on one side of the mountain. We're going to be on the other side of the mountain. I think we're on the better side of the mountain. We have beautiful mountains. We have beautiful trees and rivers. They have nothing over there. Nothing. It's a wasteland. But we're going to do that one. But then that's the last week of August. But we're going to work another one into Los Angeles just because of the Laurel Canyon thing is so hot right now. All of a sudden it's being rediscovered. Candace Owens said, you got to read this book, Chaos. A lot of people in the media are waking up to the fact that this summer is the summer of chaos, is the repeat of 1968. So Tom O'Neill's book is getting new juice. So yeah, we're going to probably do another one before the original Learning Man.
All right, hang on a second. I'm just figuring out how to block so long. Except I don't think I did. I'm gonna have to. I think I'm just gonna have to stop streaming on Twitter.
Or what we could do is come up with mailing it to an address that's not my address. I think NSA is the only one who has the capability of intercepting an email to me through Gmail.
Well, really? No. This person is going on to our Twitter feed, and they're leaving comments on Twitter, and it's showing up in my comment feed.
Okay.
And Twitter, since they got rid of Periscope, and then they brought live streaming back, but they don't have any moderation tools, means that we have no ability to moderate comments on Twitter. So they're just spamming our Twitter feed. And
to me, it's a badge of courage. Why is NSA here if it isn't a message they don't want heard?
Because they don't have a life. Because you don't have a life. Go eat another bagel. You know.
It is a badge of courage if you think about it. They're not on Alex Jones. Who did they go after on January 4th, Peter? Did they go after Alex Jones? No, they went after me and our research group with an Alex Jones story.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back to if then cause effect complex equivalences, because we went off that topic like a half an hour ago, and then so I guess the point that I was trying to make is that you can learn to recognize this pattern, and it takes practice. You have to do something that's called active listening, and what that means is that rather than allow, a lot of times what happens when you have a conversation with somebody, you kind of go into a trance, because George is very good. For example, George is very good at speaking in pictures. George uses language that creates pictures in your head, which is very engaging. And the activity of doing that actually kind of puts you into a trance. When you do active listening, what you're actually doing is that you are looking at each word as a word. And you're going, okay, what's the idea that this person is trying to build here? You know, how are they stringing the ideas together? How are these words connected? It's almost kind of like looking at a train that's going down the track, and you're looking at boxcars and tanker cars and cabooses and things like that, and you're looking at the words go by, and you're looking for the patterns of the way that the words go together. And if you can see the cause-effect statement, if you can see the cause-effect statement, and you can, and the complex equivalence can either be something like this happens because that the person's life ended because they had the medical procedure, right? The complex equivalence is the person died. The procedure is the cause effect. Because they did this, then this other thing happened, right? If you can learn to kind of recognize those things, after a while, you see them all the time. Like you can't help but see them. And you can actually kind of go into a trance with somebody when they're telling a story, and you can recognize it in real time. You can kind of pull yourself out, move back a level, go meta, as it were, from the conversation. You can start to understand these things, and it becomes a very powerful tool in being able to figure out what's real, because we did a Zoom call this last Saturday, and I was talking about how my tour guide at the Great Pyramid explained to me that there are no Egyptologists that actually know how the pyramids were built. And one of the supporters of this channel, who's a very smart guy, said, oh no, and he sends me a link to something called geopolymer. And I've linked it on the Duke Report website under sources. Apparently there's a French scientist who's figured out the formula for creating the cement that they made the blocks at the pyramids out of, and he actually did a scientific experiment. I don't know that this is true. I don't know that that's what they actually did, any more than it was aliens that created it. But this guy, if you go to I think it's geopolymer.org. If you go to this website, you can find out that there's a guy who thinks that he's figured out how they built the pyramids. Why am I talking about this? Because when I was talking to the guy about the pyramids, he said I was explaining to him that my tour guides could read hieroglyphics. And he said, how do you know that they could really read hieroglyphics? And I was stumped, because I assumed that they could read hieroglyphics because they were walking up to the wall and they were acting like they were reading them. And then I realized that he was right. The guy who called me out was right. It's like, I don't know that they were really reading the hieroglyphics. It looked like they were reading the hieroglyphics, but I don't read hieroglyphics, so how would I know that? You know, it's so the analysis of language is a really powerful thing, and I think that it's something that we should have been taught in third grade, and we're not.
Excellent. Well, I do think we read the live exercise, and I do think it later proved out that we were correct. So we'll leave it at that, I guess. Sometimes they can read what's written on the wall, and sometimes they can't.
Indeed, indeed. So with that, I'm going to say that if you want to support George Webb, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/George Webb, no E, the number 1. Or if you want to read his Substacks, which he's been fast and furious producing lately, you can go and support George at georgewebb.substack.com. And if you want to support the Duke Report, and there's lots of people who have been very gracious in continuing to support the Duke Report as I go through my refactoring of the Duke Report, like I've been doing the last couple of weeks, then you can go to buymeacoffee.com/the Duke Report, or you can go to thedukereport.com and you can buy yourself an edgy t-shirt. Stu Peters, I shot some pictures of Stu Peters last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. I lose track. And I anticipate the Duke Report t-shirt that says "We need more rope" is going to become very popular. It's going to become very popular. Stu is going to make it popular for me. And what else? With that, George, I will see you again on Tuesday.
See you then, Peter. Next Tuesday.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.